Good day, everyone. This is Evelyn Ackah from the Ask Canada Immigration Lawyer Evelyn Ackah podcast. I am really excited today because I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming a colleague and now friend, Gerry Scott, to our podcast. Welcome, Gerry.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Evelyn.
I really appreciate it. And we've been talking over the last couple of years and doing different things together. So this is wonderful to have the opportunity to introduce you to our listeners and people participating and listening to Ackah Law's podcast, but also for you to share more about what you do. So I'm going to give a quick bio, everyone, on Gerry Scott, and then we'll start, okay?
Sounds great. Thank you.
So Gerry is a portfolio manager and a branch manager with Raymond James Limited. He has over 30 years experience in the industry. Gerry established his own IIROC dealership branch in 1998. And in 2011, he joined Raymond James and Limited and services his clients from his office in Coquitlam. He holds a certified financial planner designation, a chartered investment manager designation, and a certified retirement planning counselor designation, and is also a life insurance representative. Gerry is an advisor at Raymond James that is licensed in the United States. He is licensed to serve clients in Hawaii, Arizona, California, Utah, and Washington, just to mention a few. He is the creator of two apps. One is called Snowbirds US Day Tracker and the Canada Physical Presence Tracker. And these two apps are available on iTunes and Google Play, and I have them as well on my phone. And Gerry splits his time between Vancouver and Maui, both gorgeous places. He's a true outdoors person when it comes to his time away from the office. So that is Gerry Scott. Welcome again.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Gerry, can you tell me, before we get into kind of the questioning that I have in terms of how you work and what you do for clients cross-border, why did you get into this area? What was it that got you interested?
Well, there's two sides to every business. One, to run a successful business, you have to be very entrepreneurial. I honestly believe that anybody who's entrepreneurial, 10, 15 years from now, we're going to be treating it with drugs because it's a very interesting business. There's ups and downs and all the above that comes with owning your own business. You know, the reason why I got into it, like a lot of folks, you find out at a very young age your passion in life. And my passion in life was always asking questions. From the time I was 4 years old, you know, your parents would give you direction, and I was the sibling that always asked why. You know, I wanted to have a definition of the yes or no answer. So curiosity has always been something that's been, you know, if you can list that as a hobby. But I really do enjoy helping people. And in the space that we're in, when an American moves south, when America moves up north here or Canadians move south, it really is very complex. And they will move for many reasons, love, politics. We're finding COVID, people coming home because of COVID and borders being locked up. But, you know, being a money person, being very, very young and wanting to have a nice lifestyle, maybe more than what my parents were able to provide with the trades that they chose. I really did want to help people with one of the most complex things they can manage, which is money. And so I believe I got into the business for all the right reasons. Never one to be shy, always asking the questions and always wanting to be to help people. And you know, every time we meet somebody, and if we have mutual friends, Evelyn, we always say, be kind to everybody because you never know. We're all connected. We're all connected.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I know that's been the experience of the clients and the people we've sent your way, is they just feel very cared for, you know, very respected and very understood. And I think that is a really important when you're doing this kind of, you know, very important work. You want to know that you feel good with the person that's taking care of your money. So let's get started in our questions, Gerry. You have a very unique business model as a wealth management provider in Canada. And you also have the designation of being licensed in both the US and Canada, which is pretty unique. Can you expand on the services you provide for Americans moving to Canada once they have their PR cards?
Yeah, the biggest thing that shocks a lot of Americans when they move up to Canada is they have all these retirement vehicles. May they be the Roth IRAs, the 403(b)s, the 401(k)s. What they find out very quickly when they move to Canada, they got their Canadian address, they believe that they're able to maintain that relationship with that advisor that they've worked with for many, many years. Sadly, that advisor in the United States, as soon as there's a change of address to a Canadian address, that account gets frozen. And the American firms do not have the exemption in most cases to be able to continue to manage that relationship. So that's the biggest thing that usually we get calls from yourself or the US accountants that are going to continue to file their US tax returns. We get that call and there's a problem.
Yeah.
And we're here to solve that problem, because when you're licensed in both countries, you're able to accommodate that person. We can use a Canadian address. We are licensed with FINRA, so we're going to continue to maintain those assets in the United States. So that's the biggest thing that we're finding when the Americans move up to Canada here.
That's great. No, I think it makes perfect sense, because I definitely have clients who have, we do a lot of cross-border work and they don't think about that. What's going to happen to my investments? And I think it's one of those things, just like you buy a house or whatever, you put your kids in school in Canada, you have to think about what happens to all that money that you've worked accumulating and now you've left the country. So I think having somebody like you with that expertise is really critical. And I know it's come up even in terms of somebody we know who, lost a spouse, and then you have to deal with the estate issues on top of all of that before you can even move money. So it's very, very complicated for sure. Are you one of the few people that's licensed on both sides? It seems very rare.
Well, it's becoming, we find that with Raymond James, there is a lot of advisors that are taking their Series 7 and becoming US licensed. So there are a lot of advisors that can do a very good job, and other advisors are just starting to get into this field. And there's so much to learn. I mean, fast forward 6 years and I'll tell you something. I mean, it's every day we're learning something. I mean, when Canadians are moving back home, they're going through that immigration process, and if they've had a green card, it's almost like, and you could expand on this, is it's almost as if they were renouncing. And what is their threshold for the what are the tax implications? So there's advisors that actually that know this well, and then there's advisors that are just starting to get into it. And I always caution people that make sure that you're sourcing out the right advisor, not just doing a friend a favor because he's now licensed in the States.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential risk, right?
Oh, it's ongoing. And what we also find is that the advisors that are not licensed in the States, through the treaty, you're able to transfer some of these pensions through I think it's called a 60J rollover. And sadly, a lot of the Americans that move up to Canada here might want to go home one day. We all want to go home. And so I think you got to be careful that sometimes if you do the 60J rollover, where you're taking a pension plan and rolling into an RSP, you might be doing that client a disservice if they intend to go home one day, because you're trapping them in as beautiful as Canada is, and you and I talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
Canada, you have to pay a lot higher taxes.
Yeah.
And you don't want to trap somebody in a higher tax jurisdiction. I mean, so you want to make sure that when you're looking at all the possibilities and options available for these Americans.
That's great.
And that's the biggest thing we find.
That's great. No, I really appreciate that insight, because what I do is purely immigration, and then we find them or also finding them a cross-border accountant. Like, does Raymond James, do you provide that accounting support, or usually refer that out too?
Most times, because it's very important for all of us professionals to have multiple relationships on the immigration side, the US side. We form these teams so clients are well looked after. Raymond James does provide US tax services and Canadian tax services. I haven't been a big user of that service because I have friends like yourself that can provide great tax advice and great immigration advice. So I tend to kind of look for the third party, looking for the personalities that we can match people with. That's the biggest thing that we're trying to do when someone is introduced to us and looking for other services.
Okay, no, that's perfect. So Gerry, I know you've created two very interesting day tracking tools. Can you tell me about them and what was the motivation to create them? I think they're fabulous.
Well, the first app, which is, which is now we're into our 8th year, I believe,
Wow.
and there's a new version coming out. It's being just submitted to Apple and Google Play. It's called the Snowbird US Day Tracker.
Mhm.
Now, I have to say, selfishly, these apps were designed for myself initially and our clients initially that have homes down south. And being an avid golfer, it's very complex. I mean, people get immigration and tax, U.S. tax. They kind of put them two together
Mhm.
and they confuse everybody around them. And it's not uncommon for a bunch of Canadian snowbirds to be sitting around the campfire in their RVs and somebody being knowledgeable and just giving this crazy advice about the 6-month rule or the 183 over 3
Mhm.
years, one being immigration and of course one being tax. So we created these apps and intended for our clients and our friends, and it's become a very, very large business out there that's turned into everybody in Canada is downloading the Snowbird app.
That's
We get a lot
great.
of questions. So I think more importantly, what it really allowed us to do, Evelyn, is create an audience. It's set up as an OBA, outside business activity, away
Mhm.
from Raymond James.
Mhm.
And it's allowed us to create referrals for the partners that we work with, people like yourself, and then on the US tax side. But it's been
Wow.
fun. I mean, people call you up and you would have never met these people. So it's nice to share what we've learned and not getting in the lane of the immigration officer or getting in the immigration lawyer and not getting in the lane of the US tax,
Mhm.
but really being very generic and then providing the right professionals that they can deal with to really take care of their concerns. So
So
it's been fun.
Gerry, yeah, no, it sounds great and it looks great and I've got to use it, but I haven't been traveling to the US as much as we used to before COVID, but we're back to that again. But tell me, what is it, how does it work? I mean, basically when they travel, they're indicating if they're in the States every time.
No, what we've done is that rather than using um, I can't, not being a technical person, um, usually what happens, Canadians, when they go down south, they turn off their phone.
Yes.
So we don't want to use this notification where they go across the border. What we like people to do is they learn a lot more if they build each trip in individually.
Okay.
Because what happens is that I don't know if the technology would ever help somebody who actually kept on going back and forth across the border. That from a GPS point of view, that would be very, very difficult
Yeah.
to monitor. So this way we say, go to the app, and they spend more time on the app, and it becomes one of their favorite apps. I hope that they can enter all this information in. So that was the Snowbird US Day Tracker, just
Mhm.
making sure you build all this information. And what this app is going to be and what it becomes down the road. I mean, we have relationships with realtors.
Mhm.
Buying a place in the States is so complex for a Canadian person.
Mhm.
So we want to make sure that we build that audience and we do these little avatar videos, which you've participated in.
Yeah.
And it's really out there to educate that snowbird traveler heading down south and just providing a really nice, honest group of professionals that they can work with.
That's great. And so you also created another one. That's the one for people coming into Canada, the Canada Physical Presence Tracker. This is newer, correct?
Yeah, this one was released in 2021. And like you say, like you mentioned it, it's called the Canada Physical Presence Tracker. That is really set up for a lot of the Americans that are coming to Canada or any foreigner immigrant that comes to Canada. And you could expand on this, but when you do get your permanent residence card, and Evelyn's been successful in getting that whole process set up for yourself, you are required to track 1,095 days over the next 5 years physically in Canada, which then will lead to the renewal or even citizenship. And of course, that's your field. But we set up that app for people like Evelyn that she could pass it on to your clients. And once again, being in the cross-border space, there's so much to know. And we just wanted to build a tool that was going to be able to help people rather than going to the spreadsheet and trying to figure it out. So that
I
was
think
our
it's-
motivation.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, one of our plans now that things are kind of stabilizing with cross-border immigration is to be able to send that app out with our clients once they get their PR. So I think there'll be more people reaching out and looking at that, because it is easier if you have that constancy in your mind that you got to keep track, especially now that people are traveling again back and forth and all over the world. To help them to maintain their permanent residence before they get citizenship is really valuable. So is there anything else? I want to talk to you about business clients. So for instance, what are the services you provide for entrepreneurs and business owners, Gerry?
Well, really what it is in Canada, it really comes down to your stay in Canada. So outside of the business market, people that are coming home, entrepreneurial people, we also work with professional athletes. And these athletes, you know, once they get traded to the Vancouver Canucks, what they end up doing is their intent is sometimes the Sedins and some of these other people make Vancouver their home and continue to work for the club. Some of them come over on a 5-year contract, 6-year contract, and we set up things that are called it's called a compensation, a retirement compensation arrangement. And really what that is because we've got a tax treaty with Sweden, these people can put a bunch of money into this trust, into this compensation arrangement. And the intent is when they go home, we have a tax treaty with Sweden. They pay their 25% tax on this, on the wind-up of the RCA, we'll give it the acronym. And that it just allows them to set up. So that takes care of those people that are hockey players that are coming to Canada and want to go home one day. And I've never been to Sweden in this case, and I hear Sweden is as beautiful as Canada. I mean, very friendly people. And then when it comes to business owners, there's all kinds of things that we could be doing for them. It could be individual pension plans. It could be RRSPs. Some things we have to avoid, things like TFSAs, if they continue to file US tax returns. There's a lot of, we always take the direction of the accountant. It's really one accountant says do it, the other one says don't do it. And that's why we take the advice from the accounting firms, if that makes sense. And then the other thing is really just making sure that these immigrant business owners or entrepreneurial people that come into Canada, it can be very, very, running businesses in Canada is tough as, even if you were born and raised in this country. So I can imagine it can be very difficult for an immigrant person coming into Canada and setting up a business. And one of the things that you and I've talked about a lot is when you establish a team, you have your advisor that you can feel comfortable with, making sure that your immigration lawyer is working with that advisor. The referral that goes off to the banking people, people that go, the referral that goes off to the accountants, just making sure that you have a really good team in place and you're aware of everything and the benefits that you're going to provide for your employees. We have a referral that we work with a very experienced person in Vancouver. Yes, we're licensed to do it. But trust me, when you're doing Canadian investments, U.S. investments, U.S. law, Canadian law, we farm off. If there's a specialty, we have to farm that out because we can't be everything to everybody.
I'm the same. We do exactly the same thing. I think it gives the client a better experience for sure, because you're in your wheelhouse, you're doing what you do well. So let me just ask you another question. In your opinion, do immigrant business owners have the same priorities and concerns as Canadian-born entrepreneurs?
I think they do. I think it's there's so many more things that are, like I say, being raised in this country and being born in this country. It's difficult for myself to build businesses and move forward. I would imagine it's got to be that much more difficult for an a person who's coming into Canada as an immigrant with the point of establishing a business. As beautiful as Canada is, we do pay the piper. We pay a lot of tax. Our tax system, I think, can be very, very complicated. The U.S. system, when I get to learn it, it seems from my point of view, it seems to be a little bit more favorable. I don't know if you agree or disagree. Maybe it's just the lower tax rates
Yeah, I
uh,
agree.
put a bigger smile on my face. But Canada is a very high taxed country, and we provide all these wonderful benefits for
You
people,
do.
but they don't come free. So I would say that it's got to be very, very intimidating. And the importance of people like yourself and the bankers and all these other professionals you need to surround yourself with, I think it becomes even that much more important.
I totally agree with that. I mean, from my client experience, we have worked with a lot of business owners, and they may have been very successful back home, but when they're transferring or doing intercompany transfer or buying a business in Canada, they find it's more about how things work. The systems, the registry, all the different things are different, and also having a network. So I think a part of our job too is to help them develop a network, just like you said, who you would advise them to contact. Of course, they have to choose who they want and feel comfortable with, but it helps if we can help them with a nice group or a team that they can choose to kind of establish themselves with. It just gives them that extra security that they're working with credible professionals. Because you hear about a lot of people that are not professionals and, take advantage of immigrants. And so I think for us, you and I both, and the people we work with, that personal referral goes a long way to establishing credibility.
Yeah, well said. And of course, you had COVID
Oh.
and people. Yeah, there's another podcast.
How COVID affected all of us. That's the next podcast.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, just having the workforce and the younger workforce and all the things and their views and working from home and I think it's like every business, you want to build this culture and you want to have people around you and yeah, so I think the world is changing and like I say, business is tough.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's very rewarding. The business owner does get off at 5:30 on Friday afternoon, which is an early day.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of benefits of being the business owner, and I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. There's
No,
great
but it's
benefits
true.
to building a great business. And I like
It's true. And I mean, you've done that, and you with your career, 30 years plus your time at Raymond James. I mean, it's wonderful what you've built. One thing I really like working with Gerry is he's got that entrepreneurial spirit. He still has that excitement and energy. And I think sometimes it ebbs and flows for me based on the border situation or the politics. But you always bring out that passion and that support. And I think that it really comes through in terms of how you take care of the people that you work with. So I am very grateful for your time today. And I really appreciate you joining us on our podcast today. And I look forward to continuing our working relationship over many years to come, Gerry.
Well, thank you, Evelyn, and like yourself, I mean, we feel off each other. You have that passion and that care. And I'll leave with one last story. When I came into this business 30 years ago, it can be very intimidating. I mean, there was bankers and accountants and lawyers and professional athletes in our training class.
Wow.
And it was that very first day, I just remember the biggest advantage one could ever have is knowledge is king, but caring is everything.
It is.
And I think that's where you and I enjoy each other's company, is that we have the same agenda, and that is look after people.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate that. It's true. We wouldn't be doing this for all these years if we didn't love it and we didn't love our clients and the difference that we can make in their lives. So I'd love to thank you so much for joining me on the Ask Canada Immigration podcast. And I look forward to speaking to you soon, Gerry. Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. All the best. Stay safe.
You too.